Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Vice Chair, Deputy Chief Eddie Reyes on my left, and the FCC Commissioner Julius Janikowski on my right, we'd like to welcome you to the inaugural meeting of the ERIC Public Safety Advisory Council meeting. And I think the only proper way to kick off the work we're about to do is to allow the Honorable Chairman to make a few remarks. And Mr. Chairman, might I say how grateful public safety community is that you've created this opportunity and that the Commission has sought fit to reach out to us for our opinions and our input, and we hope to deliver you timely and meaningful work. So, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you very much, Chief Johnson and Deputy Chief Reyes. First of all, thank you for agreeing to take on this role. As you'll remember, I spoke with both of you as we were putting this together, and we all agreed that this was not an exercise that we wanted to go through disconnected from the real needs the country has, and that there was a lot of work that we need to do. I'll talk a little bit about it, but I'm just very pleased that we have you, Chief Johnson, and you, Deputy Chief Reyes, driving a process, taking this as seriously as you are, and pushing the effort to make sure that we can make real progress on our goals. This is, as Chief Johnson said, the first meeting of a new entity. The new entity is actually a critical advisory committee to another new entity. The other new entity is the Emergency Response Interoperability Center. This is the Public Safety Advisory Committee, and this is all about our collective efforts to wrestle with the fact that we have not made as much progress as we would have liked to have made on interoperability in the years that passed, and a recognition that some of the issues were organizational. This has been a matter of importance to everyone at the table, to the Commission, and to me personally. We all have different reasons on how we come to bring real passion to these issues. For me personally, it was a combination of work that I did early in my career as an emergency medical technician in New York City. I was just someone who pointed this out to me, and I should not be asked to fix any broken bones, or it's been many years since my certification has lapsed. You know, you have little kids and you really worry about this because, anyway. But you learn a lot about the incredible service and role of first responders, and the vital role that communications plays in emergency response when you spend some time on ambulances in Manhattan. And I was lucky enough to do that early in my career and survive that effort. I also was not too many blocks away from the World Trade Center on September 11th. It was about 20 blocks walking north, and was down at the site that day, actually trying to see if there was anything that we could do as civilians to help. But for all those reasons, and everyone at this table has their own reasons, their own experiences for why they recognize the importance of this. So it was really no surprise, I think, that in our National Broadband Plan last year, we took these issues seriously and, in fact, recommended this process that we're now launching today. As I mentioned, 9/11 was clearly instructive in a powerful way to the work that this committee is now being asked to focus on. The 9/11 Commission report recognized that the absence of, quote, compatible and adequate communications among public safety organizations at the local, state, and federal levels remains an important problem. That was true then, and although some progress has been made, it's still true today. For the families of the first responders who lost their lives, no report was needed to understand the importance and the urgency of this problem. So over the years, we've spent, as a country, a lot of money trying to achieve interoperable communications. Unfortunately, and I think there's a wide agreement on this, the investment hasn't had the intended payoff yet. At the same time, what's been happening in the broadband communications technology space makes the need even more visible to people. It also makes the opportunities to finally deliver on interoperability somewhat easier from a technical level. The mission of this committee is to make recommendations to assist the FCC in the development of a technical framework that will finally enable nationwide interoperability. This brings me to a second critical point. Achieving interoperability is a shared mission. You could call it an interoperable mission, I'm not sure. But the membership of this committee accordingly comprises a diverse mix of public safety representation, from major national public safety associations to state and local public safety agencies and the vendors and carriers that often serve them. It's through the collaboration and input of this rich and experienced collection of expertise that we will together, I'm confident, ensure that the mission of interoperability is a success. So I'm proud that this committee has been formed. I'm personally pleased that it was formed during my tenure, but the truth is I'm not going to be pleased at all until we can all look around this room and say we have made real progress on the goals of interoperability. We have accelerated progress. We can see that the results are before us. And really, that's my charge to this committee. It's why, again, I'm so grateful to each of you for participating. For those of you who are public servants, we know how busy you are, how hard you work, and that it is a stretch for you to come to Washington and participate in meetings like this. And for those of you in the private sector, we appreciate your willingness to become temporary public servants and help us all work together to do this. I will tell you that advisory committees like this can make an enormous positive input to the work of the Commission, but it's not guaranteed. And in my experience, for these things to work, a few elements have to come together. The committee itself needs leadership that's willing to somehow find the time in a day to lead the committee. And again, I thank you for that, because I don't think it's a small task, and your willingness to play that role is a very big deal. Second, it needs members of the committee who are willing to put the time into it in the way that the chair and vice chair organized to make a contribution. And I don't know whether you'll divide the group up into subcommittees or whether there are lots of different structures. But these are your leaders, and I want to ask each of you to participate in whatever format is selected to harness the expertise of this committee. And I thank you for that in advance. And the other thing that's required is in the situation of an advisory committee to an agency is a willing agency. And we are a willing agency. It's very, very important to us. We know we cannot do this alone. And we know that we need precisely this kind of expertise and input and consensus building to get us there. And then finally, the thing that's needed, in my experience, in advisory committees like this, is a functioning bridge between the committee and the agency. And in Jennifer Manner, who is here, everyone should see Jennifer, because Jennifer will play a very important role in building that bridge and sustaining it, and make sure that it's a fully functional two-way channel for communications. Admiral Barnett, I don't know if he's here this morning. So he's not here. There will be others who will be working with Jennifer on this task. Sometimes it's this bridge that becomes the hardest part, because the tenders of the bridge are very busy. There's a lot going on, and I think it really requires very hard work from people on both sides of the bridge to make sure that that becomes an effective conduit. So with that, again, I'm so grateful that you're all here. We're at the beginning of a process. We know that we want to make very substantial progress in this group by the 10th anniversary of 9/11, which is coming up very quickly. And most importantly, we all want to be able to say to each other at the conclusion of this advisory committee's work that we made a positive difference in accelerating interoperability, delivering on the need that the 9/11 Commission recommended, and that this will have been a collective effort with contributions from every single person at this table. And so with that, Chief and Deputy Chief, thank you again very much. I'm pleased to be here, and I know you'll have a good, constructive day with more work to come.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We greatly appreciate your time, your attention, and your passion about this issue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm going to, just so you know, I will have this on the TV in my office. So we have ways of making sure you're working down here. But I'm going to, but I am going to get out of the way, and I want Chief Johnson and Deputy Chief Reyes to take charge and run this committee. And again, I thank you all for your work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman mentioned, Admiral Barnett has been deployed, as it were, and is not able to attend today. However, I believe we have the Admiral by video, pre-recorded video. Is that correct?
Correct. Good morning. My name is Jamie Barnett. I'm Chief of the FCC's Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the inaugural meeting of the Emergency Response Interoperability Center Public Safety Advisory Committee. This is an important milestone for the Commission and for the future of public safety communications. And I'm sorry that I'm unable to share it with you in person. When Chairman Janikowski announced the formation of the PSAC in January, he remarked that this committee will play a key role in our efforts to ensure that public safety broadband networks are interoperable on a nationwide basis. I cannot overemphasize the importance of this effort. Almost a decade after the tragic events of September 11, 2001, interoperability in public safety communications remains elusive, and our nation's first responders continue to lack access to a nationwide interoperable communications network dedicated to their needs. At this moment, we have a unique opportunity to get this right from the outset to ensure that an adequate technical framework for nationwide interoperability for this public safety broadband network is in place on day one. This is an opportunity we can't afford to miss. I'm honored to be working with each of you as we move forward on this critical endeavor. I thank you for your willingness to serve on this committee and look forward to the discussions that follow. Once again, welcome.
Admiral, if you're watching, thank you very much for not only your words, but more importantly, I think, for his dedication to the public safety community. He has certainly been accessible and has lent a willing ear and has been open to our issues. At this point in today, Jennifer, are you still close by? Jennifer, is there anything you would like to say? We didn't have a spot reserved for you, but okay, you're at the end? Thank you, Jennifer. Just kind of as the chair, I think Eddie and I would like to make a few comments about what we see in the horizon. First, I can't tell you how impressed and how surprised that we were that when we sent out the memo that said we apologize, there will be no travel money available for today's meeting, we had less than 10 people not able to make it. I think this speaks to not only you and your priorities, but I think it speaks to what we see as the importance of this work. This is meaningful work. This is not administratium. This is the kind of work that will make a difference on the street. Problems with interoperability exist innumerable times every day at the first responder level. And they're issues that jeopardize public safety. They're issues that make our emergency response system inefficient. And given the history of how we got where we are, today, they virtually were inevitable. If you look at the history of spectrum allocations, you notice that spectrum is issued to public safety in small slices and disparate spectrum bands. And what that does is, over time, is it puts you in a space where as we move away from this is my territory, my community, you can't come in and I won't leave, and you move to a larger, more regional, state by state, county by county, and sometimes even a national response, the need to talk to one another overwhelm the spectrum distribution model. That is interoperability at its finest. The ability to, in a predictable fashion, connect disparate systems, connect users who infrequently or frequently work together and need to talk. And our work is important, and it's important on a lot of different fronts. We will be divided into 4 committees, and Chief Reyes will talk about that later in today's meeting, but these 4 committees is where that work will be done. Those 4 committees have been pre-allocated based on what we think your strengths and specialization is, and where we think you'll make the greatest contribution. If you strongly feel that you're in the wrong spot, please approach me and we'll have a discussion about where you're assigned and where your strengths and contributions may better serve this committee. But the work will be done within the committees. We will report back to the larger group, and eventually those recommendations will be offered to the FCC as recommendations from this committee on how to better do their job. I hope you find this interesting. I hope you find this rewarding. I hope you find that the challenges we put before you are achievable, and I hope you find the work meaningful. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, if responders can't take the outputs from the Commission itself and improve our on-the-street working environment, then we will have failed. I don't think there's a person that is at this table today that wants to see that. The challenge for the Vice Chair and I is that we create an environment in which that can be effectively achieved, and that we provide you with enough direction that you know where to spend your energy, but provide you enough latitude that you can capture things that we haven't contemplated. So in advance, we want to thank you for your work, and I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Deputy Chief Eddie Reyes for a few comments and introduction of the members. Chief?
Thank you, Jeff. One of the perils of being the last formal speaker on the dais is that everything that's important and needs to be said has already been said. So with that, I'll just start by just thanking the Commission first and foremost for, it's a humbling experience, I know, for Jeff and I in speaking about serving in this capacity, and we're humbled that the Commission would have chosen us to lead this effort. As Jeff and the Chairman has recently said, very important effort, a lot of very hard work in front of us, but I'm also elated as I look around the table and see the persons that are with their sleeves rolled up and ready to go to work, that I think we're gonna make some significant progress on this very important effort. This is an inaugural event, an inaugural meeting. This is an opportunity for us to get some introductions, to hear some basic thoughts, and then the real work, as Chief Johnson said, starts with the subcommittees that will be discussed later in the agenda, and so that's where I think a lot of the real progress and work will be made. As been stated earlier, we're fast approaching the 10-year anniversary of September 11th, and while we're not where we need to be yet, I don't want to minimize, and I certainly don't want to overlook the effort that's been made across this great nation, especially at the state level, at the regional level, because there has been some tremendous work that has been accomplished, and I don't want to overshadow that work with respect to standards and training that's been implemented by a lot of state interoperability executive committees and a lot of regional committees. This is what we're here to accomplish today, and through this forum is a tool in the toolbox. It's a major tool in the toolbox, but nevertheless, it's just a tool. It's not the only thing that's going to help us put out fires or put criminals in jail. It is a tool in the toolbox, and there's been a lot of tools that have been accomplished thus far that have helped us kind of get to where we're at today. So as has been stated, well, we're not where we need to be with mobile broadband on a national platform. There have certainly been some successes, some small, some large, in the arena of standards and training. And I just want to put that plug out, because oftentimes all that hard work oftentimes gets overlooked when we're at this forum and we're talking about a national broadband footprint that hasn't been accomplished yet. So I just want to mention that. The last thing I'll do before I'll start with the introductions is I just very much want to recognize the public safety first responder community, as Chief Johnson has said, that stepped up to the table on short notice with no funding and wearing multiple hats. As I look around the room, I know I see 3 or 4 hats, shrugging off your shoulder. So I know firsthand from the public safety first responders what a commitment it is to serve on this committee, and what an honest effort it is on your part to be here with us this morning. For the private sector community that I look around the room, thank you for supporting us and for being here today, because without the private sector community, public safety and the first responders certainly could not get their job done. So on that note, what I'd like to do is start with the introductions here to my left with Mr. Good. If we could just start by just going around the table briefly, talk about or just introduce yourself and your organization, so that we can move on to the FACA overview.
I'm Tom Good. I'm General Counsel with ADIS, the Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Solutions.
I'm Paul Steinberg. I'm Chief Technology Officer of Motorola Solutions.
My name is Ken Budka with Alcatel-Lucent.
Brant Mitchell, Deputy Director for Louisiana Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness.
Good morning. I'm Jonathan Moore, Director of the Fire and EMS Operations Department at the International Association of Firefighters.
Ray Flynn, Assistant Sheriff, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police, representing Major County Sheriff's Association.
And Dick Murgon, representing the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials. I'm the immediate past president.
Yeah, I'm Chuck Dadd. I'm a Deputy Chief with the New York City Police Department, representing the Major Cities Chiefs Association.
I'm Brad Stoddard with the State of Michigan, the Director of Michigan's Public Safety Communications System.
Good morning. I'm Alex Coleman, Vice President of Government and Education Markets for Verizon Wireless.
Good morning. I'm Charles Werner, the Fire Chief for the City of Charlottesville and the SafeCom Executive Committee Vice Chair.
Morning, John Lenahan with the Los Angeles County Fire Department. I'm representing the Los Angeles Regional Interoperable Communication System.
Morning, I'm Steve Kumaletti. I'm a Deputy Superintendent for the New York State Police, representing New York State.
Morning, I'm Patricia Cooper. I'm the President of the Satellite Industry Association.
Hi, I'm Tom Sorley, Deputy Director of Radio Services for the City of Houston, and I'm representing the National Public Safety Telecommunications Council.
I'm Bill Brownell. I'm Telecommunications Manager for the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, representing the 50 state departments of transportation, the District of Columbia, and Commonwealth of Puerto Rico.
I'm Ken Boley. I'm with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer in the District of Columbia, and I'm here on behalf of the National Association of State CIOs.
Tom Bretthauer. I represent the state of Ohio Multi-Agency Radio Communication System.
Stephen Mayer, Chief Technology Officer at Intrado.
Hi, I'm Gary Wingrove. I work for the Air and Ground Ambulance Service of the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and I'm the immediate past president of the National EMS Management Association.
I'm Ken Stunek. I'm a research faculty and adjunct professor at the Illinois Institute of Technology, representing the Wireless Network and Communications Research Center there, as well as our Next Generation 911 effort.
Good morning. I'm Tom Shagru. I'm the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs for T-Mobile USA.
Bill Schreier, City Government of Seattle.
I'm Doug Aiken, Chief of Lakes Region Mutual Aid in New Hampshire and representing International Municipal Signal Association.
Brian Font, CEO of the National Emergency Number Association.
And I'm Ray Lear. I'm the State of Maryland's Interoperability Director and representing the National Governor Association. Good morning.
Ken Hughes, representing the City of New Orleans, UASI region.
Mike Simpson, Assistant Director, Texas Department of Public Safety, representing the state of Texas.
Terry Salt, Chief of Police in Sandy Springs, Georgia, in the Atlanta metro area.
Vanya McCann, I am Senior Vice President of Sprint Nextel Corporation.
I'm Art Preston. I'm representing the needs of the rural telecommunication carriers nationwide.
Good morning. I'm Ajit Kahadua, and I'm representing Nokia Siemens Networks.
Good morning. Andy Siebold, and I'm representing the National Sheriff's Association.
Hi, I'm Kevin McGinnis. I'm Communications Technology Advisor for the National Association of State EMS Officials and Chair of SafeCom Program.
I'm Michael Klein, State Emergency Management Coordinator for Virginia, representing the National Emergency Management Association.
John Collins, Director of Engineering Compliance, American Society for Healthcare Engineering, representing the American Hospital Association.
Harlan McEwen, representing the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
Len Edling, Chicago Fire Department, Commander Bureau of Operations, representing the Interagency Board.
I'm Arnold Hooper. I'm System Manager, Regional Interoperability Coordinator, representing Tennessee Valley Regional Communication System. It's a multi-state, Tennessee, East Tennessee, and Northwest Georgia.
Good morning. My name is Dorothy Spears-Dean, and I'm representing the Virginia Information Technologies Agency. I'm the Public Safety Communications Coordinator for the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Good morning. Stacy Black, AT&T.
Good morning. Dennis Martinez, Chief Technology Officer at Harris RF Communications Group.
Good morning. Roger Quayle, Chief Technology Officer, IP Wireless.
I'm Byron Neal, a Chief Network Architect at Cineverse Technologies.
And I know the Commission has established a bridge for those that couldn't join us in person today. Is there anyone on the bridge that would like to introduce themselves?
Yeah, are you there?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Robert Nelson. I'm with the Campo Band of Mission Indians in San Diego County, California. I'm the Assistant Tribal Administrator and also the Director of Emergency Management. I'm representing the California Intertribal Council on behalf of all of the tribes in the state of California.
Duly noted, sir. Next.
This is Mark Rudd from the state of Delaware. I'm the state of Delaware SWIC and also the chair of the National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators representing NICSWIC and the state of Delaware. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Good morning. Hugh Clements from Providence Police Department in Rhode Island, representing the Fraternal Order of Police.
Outstanding. Thank you. Next.
Hey, good morning. This is Mike Beckstrand with the California Emergency Management Agency and represent the Public Safety Communications for the state of California. Happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Good morning. This is Bob Weidman. I'm Statewide Interoperability Coordinator for the state of Nevada.
Thank you, sir, for checking in.
Good morning. This is Jackie Miller from the state of New Mexico. I'm the CIO for the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Office and the Statewide Interoperability Coordinator.
Thank you, Jackie. Anyone else?
Good morning. This is Mark Hill from the Gila River Indian Community, representing the Gila River Indian Community and the tribes in Arizona.
Thank you. Anyone else on the bridge? Okay, that concludes our roll for today's meeting. Chief Johnson, back to you.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is Christopher Epps from Mississippi, representing the Wireless Commission.
Thank you very much.
Klein representing Erickson.
Any additional folks on the bridge? Thank all of you on the bridge for checking in with us today. We're sorry that you couldn't attend, but we're grateful that you took time to join us electronically. Also, I wanted to mention that Jackie Miller, who you heard on the bridge, will be chairing our Working Group 1 on interoperability. So, Jackie, thank you for covering that. Chief Doug Aiken, directly across from me today, will be her point person today in her physical absence. So if you have issues, please get with Mr. Aiken. At this time, I think we would like to invite Paula Silberthau from the FCC Office of the General Counsel to join us and cover some of the FACA procedural issues. So, Paula?
morning. Huge group. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to cover a couple of points that are already in a handout that you have, but I'll just sort of step through them pretty quickly. Your procedures are governed by FACA, which is the Federal Advisory Committee Act, and it has a couple guiding principles, which are openness in government, diversity and balance in membership, and public accountability. What that means is that there needs to be timely notice of meetings, and you'll hear about that at least 15 days in advance, and there'll be notices in the Federal Register. What this means for you actually is if you feel there needs to be an emergency meeting of anything, something comes up, you should coordinate with your designated federal officer, Gene Volano, over there. Let him know, because under FACA you can't just say, aha, you know, there's something we really need to discuss and it has to be done in 1 week. You know, in order to give everyone, especially a group this large, time to attend, it's very important to coordinate with Gene and to be able to give that 15 days notice. Obviously, as we've seen in the news, if there are really serious emergencies and you guys actually need to convene, let Gene know and you can get special dispensation for emergency situations. Under FACA, anyone who wants to attend the meetings and submit written statements is allowed to do so, subject to reasonable regulations, being able to fit in the room, that sort of thing, allowing things to be done in an orderly manner. And one thing that could be relevant to this committee is that for the most part everything has to be open and meetings cannot be suddenly closed. So if you know in advance that there is a subject that you need to discuss that you think has national security implications, that's very restricted technical data, that has any trade secrets attached to it, and you want that to be distributed in a report or discussed at your meeting, again, which could happen with a group like this, again, that's something that should be coordinated with Gene and with your assistant designated federal officer. That's something that needs to be cleared through the head of the agency and would have to be sort of approved and also provided for in the Federal Register. So again, it's all about sort of figuring these things out in advance. All meetings will have detailed minutes, and all documents that are submitted in your reports up through the parent committee would be available through dissemination to any member of the public who wanted it. Again, if you feel that there's anything that's a trade secret, that's confidential, that you're concerned about, check with Gene. You can submit things with requests for confidentiality, but if that's not approved, everything otherwise is very public and available for inspection. So that's just one thing to keep at the back of your mind. Your committee chair and your vice chair are really important people. They serve as a focal point for you. If you have concerns, you should get in touch with them directly, and also with the designated federal officer if you have any questions about procedures. Back to Gene, who'll speak to you in a second. He should be sort of the focus point for all your procedural questions. The designated federal officer calls a meeting. He approves the agendas, not just for the full committee, but also for your working groups. He or his assistant would attend the meetings, sometimes chair them, close them as necessary, maintain all committee records, and make sure that notes are taken. One thing that comes up a lot as people work through the FACAs is how the informal working groups function, and a lot of the most important business is done through your working groups, because these are the groups that actually gather the information, often develop working plans, draft reports, discuss preliminary findings. Sometimes people get confused though, and they think that the working groups are the same as the parent FACA. And that's not true, and it's an important distinction. Working groups can meet informally because they are not the FACA. They are typically closed groups unless there's perhaps an expert that you want to invite. And what allows this to happen is that the working groups are relatively informal, and they cannot function as a de facto parent advisory group. The working group simply makes recommendations to you folks as the parent FACA, and the parent FACA needs to not rubber stamp them, but to actually debate and evaluate the recommendations of the working group. And for that reason, the working group recommendations and reports need to be submitted to the full FACA in plenty of time that everyone can actually evaluate them. Working groups can make recommendations, but they cannot bind the parent. Working groups can't make direct recommendations to the FCC. Basically, the working groups are a step before the full FACA. The one other thing about the working group where sometimes issues arise is who would attend the working group meetings, because many times those of you who serve on the full FACA don't have time or perhaps even the specific expertise, so that when you are assigned to a working group, maybe you would decide, there's someone else in my company or someone else on my staff that would be better suited for handling the working group meetings. If that is the case, you should coordinate the designation of a substitute with your DFO. That's really important because the FCC needs to understand who will actually be attending all of the working group sessions. So I would just emphasize to you, even if you plan to attend, but maybe there's one that you have a conflict of meetings or you get sick or whatever, let the DFO know in advance that there'll be a substitute person who would be attending the meeting. And if for all of the meetings of the working group you feel that there is someone better in your organization to handle them, then you would need to clear that with Jean, and that person could be sort of more formally designated to attend the working group meetings. On the working groups, one other thing. It's fine if you're trying to gather information, if there's an expert that's not a member of your group that you want to have attend, either to listen or to give a presentation. But for the most part, it should be just working group members on a regular basis. So if there's someone who, for some reason, you folks on the working group think is really well known in a field or would be a real asset to the group that you would like to have regularly attend and actually function as a member, again, that's something you can expand the working groups actually beyond the membership that's here, and that's fine, but it has to be done and coordinated through Jean. I think that's it. Does anyone have any procedural questions? Okay. Oh. And this is the DFO, Jean Flano.
Good morning. You'll hear this many times today. Thank you for all coming. One of my colleagues this morning, when she heard that I was coming down and we had convened this meeting, said, gee, all you need to do is look in the newspaper and understand just how important the work is that committee will do. I don't think we can say anything more than that. As Paula indicated, I'm the designated federal officer. I am the bridge that the chairman mentioned earlier this morning, and my backup is Brian Hurley, if you could stand up. You have seen communications from me by email. My name is Gennaro. I go by Gene. Please feel free to call me Gene and not Gennaro. It worries me when people refer to me as Gennaro. You think I'm in trouble. With regard to being in trouble, my job is to work closely with Chief Johnson and Deputy Chief Reyes. To the extent you are waiting for something from them that is actually coming from the Commission, if it's late, if it's delayed, it's me, it's not them, okay? So feel free to criticize me if you like. We do our best. We are shorthanded, but again, we do our best. A couple of the points that Paula raised with respect to procedure and asking questions. If you do have a question, at a minimum, please include the chair and vice chair on any emails to me so we keep them in the loop. We will respond to your questions as soon as possible. On another matter, the Commission is in the process of establishing a whole new web portal. Because of that, we've been delayed in setting up a web page for the FACA. Once we understand that the web portal will be up and running by the end of this month, we will establish a website, and everything the FACA does will be on that website, which will include transcripts, public notices, and other such matters. Are there any other, does anyone have any questions? Another important point that was made this morning is this is the inaugural meeting, and as such, it is, the choreographing was a little rough. We are moving quite at a much faster pace than I imagined. We will be taking a break at some point this morning. I do believe that everyone's not sitting in their appropriate spots. We'll give everybody an opportunity to get in their appropriate spots. And with that, Chief Johnson.
Thank you very much, Gene. Gene, thank you to you, Brian, Jennifer, and the staff for getting us ready for today. There's a lot of work goes into this, especially in an inaugural group. A lot of work goes into that. A lot of coordination goes into that. So thank you very much, Gene, to you and the team. We neglected to introduce Peter Vandenberg. He's from my home state of Oregon. He sits on this committee, and he was unable to join or participate today. And he's with the Oregon Department of Transportation that manages the statewide network initiative and is a waiver state also. So Peter will be joining us in the future. Lastly, for those people on the bridge, as we head into a break, we plan on taking right to straight up on the hour as a break. Let's take that opportunity, as Gene mentioned, to find our name tags when we return, and let's go ahead and take 15 minutes. Thank you for this morning. All right, buddy, here we go. Well, I hope that break gave you an opportunity to reconnect with some old friends and maybe meet some new acquaintances. A lot of you have asked me about my name tag here today, and I'll be lining up for photos with my name tag over here this afternoon. I've been called a lot of things in my life, but that is a dandy right there, I gotta say. Chief Execution Officer.
That wasn't a typo, Jeff.
Yeah, Sigmund Freud lives. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the road ahead, an introduction to the Commission's open proceeding and interoperability. And we have Behzad Ghaffari, a systems engineer with Eric. So Behzad, welcome.
You're welcome too. Good morning. I'm Behzad Ghaffari, the System Engineering Chief with Emergency Response and Interoperability Center within Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau at the FCC. On January 25th, the Commission adopted an order and FNPRM on interoperability rules for the nationwide public safety broadband network. Today, my colleagues, Pat Amadio, Brian Hurley, and I will provide you with the highlights of this effort. Do I get my slides? Okay. This item advances the vision that the National Broadband Plan had with regard to the nationwide interoperable public safety broadband network. The first step was the creation of ERIC. It was created in April 2010 within the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau at FCC. Its mission is to establish a technical and operational framework that will ensure interoperability from the outset in deployment and operation of the 700 MHz public safety broadband wireless network. Just last spring, we authorized 21 early deployments of the public safety broadband network. This was followed in December with an order providing these entities with guidance on interoperability. In January, we took another big step, the adoption of interoperability third report and order and fourth further notice of proposed rulemaking. The first part of this item is a short order. In this order, we take significant steps to address interoperability by adopting rules to guide development of a nationwide interoperable public safety broadband network. First, to ensure nationwide interoperability, we mandate that all public safety broadband networks adopt LTE, long-term evolution, as a common technology platform. Additionally, we adopt a set of key LTE interfaces to ensure interoperability and roaming. Second, due to significantly changed circumstances since the unsuccessful attempt to implement a mandatory public-private partnership in 2008, we stay particular existing mandatory partnership rules in order to provide certainty during the pendency of this proceeding. The second part of this item is a further notice of proposed rulemaking. We start interoperability rules with the notion of an architectural vision for a nationwide network. We believe that the development of a uniform nationwide architectural framework will promote a comprehensive understanding of interoperability and the steps that must be taken to achieve that objective. We propose a set of high-level principles to guide development of the network in a manner that ensures interoperability. We seek comment on each of these principles. These principles are as follows: the description of various components of the architecture, the characteristics of the regional networks that are addressed shortly, support of voice and data communications over this nationwide network, roaming authentication and interworking functions for the nationwide network, nationwide backbone network interconnecting all regional networks, services and capabilities offered at a national level, and evolution of this nationwide network over time. We seek comment on all these matters, and in particular, we seek comment on whether we should establish guiding principles for public safety broadband network architecture, and if so, whether the principles mentioned here are the principles that should serve as the basis for this architectural vision. In this fourth further notice, we consider and propose additional requirements to further promote and enable nationwide interoperability among public safety broadband networks operating in the 700 MHz band. We seek comment on a set of proposed interoperability rules. First, we address the definition of interoperability. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, provides a definition for interoperability. We propose to amend the Commission's definition of interoperability in Part 90 to harmonize it with DHS. We seek comment on this proposal. Next, we address open standards. We seek comment on implementation of open standards in order to promote interoperability and cost effectiveness. While we adopted LTE in the order, we seek comment on its evolution to new releases, its compatibility, any additional interfaces, IP versions, and so forth. Next, we address the important issue of PLMN ID, which is a required system identifier according to the 3GPP standards. Various options to assign these IDs are explored in this notice. We seek comment on all these options. Additionally, we seek comment on the mechanism by which PLMN IDs should be acquired and assigned. Roaming configuration. The 3GPP LTE standards set two categories of roaming, home routed and local breakout. We tentatively conclude that all public safety broadband networks should have the ability to support both categories of roaming. We seek comment on this conclusion. Roaming authentication and interworking functions. This is another important issue that needs to be addressed. Roamers will need to be authenticated in the visited network as they would be in their own networks. We tentatively conclude that there would be significant efficiency gains if such functions were performed by third-party clearinghouses rather than by each network operator. We seek comment on this tentative conclusion and raise additional questions for comment. Interconnectivity. Regional networks will not serve as a nationwide interoperable broadband network unless they are interconnected with adequate capacity. A number of alternative solutions for interconnectivity of regional networks exist. Three alternatives are outlined in the notice, and we seek comment on each. Priority of access and quality of service. We seek comment on how public safety broadband networks should support both prioritization and quality of service among connections as well as applications. LTE provides priority mechanism through certain capabilities, and we seek comment on them. Mobility and handover, we seek comment on these capabilities. Applications. One means of facilitating roaming across public safety broadband network is to ensure that users of each network have access to a common set of applications. We tentatively conclude the following applications to be adopted: Internet access, VPN access, status for information homepage, network access for users under the incident command system, and finally field-based server applications. Security is another important matter that is addressed in this notice. We tentatively conclude the adoption of certain security features of LTE and seek comment on this tentative conclusion and other security options. In this notice, we seek comment on the interconnectivity with public safety legacy networks. Next, we address interoperability verification through conformance testing and interoperability testing. Interoperability requires that user devices and network equipment comply with relevant standards specifications. We tentatively conclude that all user devices be subject to conformance testing. Additionally, we tentatively conclude that public safety broadband networks to perform IoT for the LTE roaming interfaces that are identified in the order. We seek comment on these tentative conclusions and related testing verification matters. At this point, I ask my colleague Pat to continue. That would be the same set of slides.
Okay, none of the buttons are working. Well, let me just start without the slides. Oh, there we go. Good morning, I'm Pat Amadeo. I'm Chief of RF Engineering with the Emergency Response Interoperability Center within the Public Safety Bureau. The majority of the remaining interoperability topics are focused on baseline operability requirements for public safety broadband networks to ensure that disparate networks are interoperable. We see comment on additional technical requirements, and there are also tentatively proposed rules in order to ensure nationwide interoperability. So let me address these in more detail. First one is out-of-band emissions, which is important to protect public safety from interference from adjacent and near operations. Otherwise, nationwide interoperability could be affected. We therefore tentatively propose to adopt limits for the nationwide public safety broadband network. In addition, we noted that out-of-band emission standards are already in place with respect to public safety narrowband spectrum in 47 CFR Part 90.543E, and those remain in effect. For performance, we recognize that spectrum is a valuable public resource, and the Commission is committed to ensuring that this resource is used efficiently. So we tentatively conclude that it is appropriate to adopt performance requirements for public safety broadband networks. Accordingly, we tentatively conclude that we should require public safety broadband networks to provide outdoor coverage at minimum data rates of 256 kilobits per second for the uplink and 768 kilobits per second for the downlink. And this is for all types of devices for a single user at the cell edge. On network capacity, we see comment on backhaul and network core capacity to maintain the desired network service quality. Robustness and hardening, we see comment related to backup power at each eNode B site or cell site within a public safety broadband network. Coverage requirements, we see comment on the advantages and disadvantages of adopting either a population or geographic-based build-out requirement. This requirement would maximize coverage while preserving the economic viability of a nationwide network. Coverage reliability, we tentatively conclude that the network should provide outdoor coverage reliability at a probability of coverage of 95% for all services and applications throughout the network. This is a standard commonly used today by land mobile radio and cellular industries. An unreliable network is inoperable and therefore not interoperable. For interference coordination, we previously required as a condition of deployment for waiver recipients that prior to deployment they coordinate and address interference mitigation needs within adjacent or bordering jurisdiction that also plan deployment. In this notice, we see comment on interference mitigation techniques and eNode B features, which will avoid signal or spectral efficiency degradation issues within a region and between overlapping adjacent regions. Network operations, administration, and maintenance, and reporting on network deployment are some more additional areas that we see comment on. Devices, we see comment on channel bandwidth requirements, band class 14 support, and multi-mode support for use of devices on this public safety LTE network. Other areas we see comment on are in-building communications focused on questions to achieve in-building coverage, deployable assets to supplement their existing coverage and capacity, and the use of public safety broadband network for fixed uses. We also see comment on how to facilitate the relocation of narrowband incumbents from public safety broadband spectrum to ensure that the spectrum can be fully utilized. And next I think is Brian Hurley. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Brian Hurley, an attorney with the Bureau, and I'm also the Deputy DFO for the committee. Just wanted to highlight two issues in the further notice concerning use of the public safety broadband spectrum. The first issue is eligibility under Section 337 of the Communications Act, and specifically whether and to what extent this section permits utilities, critical infrastructure entities, or others to be authorized to operate in that spectrum on a secondary basis. And then the second issue is how best to accommodate the use of the spectrum by federal public safety entities, whether by leasing capacity to such entities or by permitting use on a subscriber basis. And I don't think we mentioned yet, I'll just note that the comment period for the further notice ends on April 11th, and then reply comments will be due on May 10th. And that concludes our presentation. I'd ask my colleagues, Pat and Bezod, to join me up here, and if anyone has any questions, we'd be glad to take them.
Thank you, Brian.
So at this point, it'd be appropriate to open the floor to members of the committee. Do you have any questions on anything we covered this morning as it relates to the broad scope? I know we'll be drilling into the committees after lunch, and we'll be talking about what our expectations are specifically and timelines, outputs, and whatnot. And in terms of what was covered this morning, any questions at all for staff? Yes, please, Doug.
Do you see the working groups or committees operating? Will they be able to operate via telecom connections? They have to meet in person. You know, how are there any parameters that we'll be following, or can staff share some information on that?
Go ahead, Gene.
Good question. Most if not all the working group. Most if not all the working group production is done remotely by voice, by phone bridge, conference bridge.
Good.
We'll be covering some of the expectations. This will be a very aggressive timeline on the first set of outputs, very aggressive. So I think while we're expecting one more meeting, we may be able to meet this group electronically. Staff is trying to verify that with the General Counsel's office. We know this group has to convene one more time mid to late April to review committee work. And the committee work, just to get all the work they have to get done between now and then, is going to require, I think, necessitate electronic committee work. Any further questions before we take a break? Yeah, please.
Are the requests for comment that Bezod just mentioned and Pat, are those already in process? Have those already been sent out, or are they in various states of being sent?
The further notice was issued on January 26th and published in the Federal Register several weeks ago. Comment periods are April 11th. May 10th for reply comments, and if you would like, we can email that document, the further notice, to the entire committee. It's 100 and some pages. Be more than happy to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask, rather than taking a break at this point for lunch, is it possible to move into some of the other parts of the agenda? Some of us have early afternoon flights.
Yes, so it's our plan that we'll be out of here no later than 3, and by the pace at which we're moving, we'll get out of here well ahead of that, but I don't see any problem with that. Is there, staff, is there any problem with us covering, starting right now, with the overview and discussion of the individual work plans and the chair initiative?
No, I think that's fine. What we won't have is the handout.
Okay, that'd be all right with us, I think. And we'll have that for this afternoon,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So are you ready, Eddie, with the...
Again, another question.
Yeah, go ahead. So thank you for the suggestion. Yes, a question over here.
My question is, the April, mid to late April timeframe seems pretty aggressive. Could you just elaborate briefly what's driving that timeline? Because it seems like that's going to be difficult to meet.
It will.
The driving that timeline is the submission of the reply comments, which would essentially close the record at up to that point in time with respect to the commission acting on the issues teed up in the further notice. And what we are looking for is the recommendations of the committee to coincide to bolster the record.
What we know that's ancillary to that is all committee work has got to come back to the full FACA to be deliberated and concurred with. So for the committee work to get completed, come back to this group for deliberation and concurrence and adoption in order to be ready for submittal by May 12th, which is, I think, is the hard deadline. then you can see why we're saying I think there's going to be aggressive deadlines from this point forward. Especially when you're talking about getting work out of the committees and getting those through the draft phase and just working through all the issues. I think to say it's aggressive is probably understating it, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yes, please, Harlan.
So, my concern, I understand that what the commission is trying to get, but at the same time, my concern is that many people around this table are in the process of drafting comments either for their organizations or on behalf of various people. I mean, I'm involved in 3 different groups that are in the process of drafting comments that are going to be based upon some of the same principles of what you're trying to do here with this group. It's going to be really difficult for some of us, I'm going to tell you.
Further comment or question? Yes, sir.
Well, just a suggestion.
It was sort of a rock and a hard place in terms of the deadline. The commission could, or this advisory committee could ask that the commission extend those deadlines. Those are, I mean, the comments cycles are set by the commission. And it's not unusual in a complex proceeding for parties to ask for an extension for good reason, and that create a little breathing room. The other possibility is to contemplate, the Commission's rules do contemplate information coming in after the closing of the pleading cycle in a rulemaking proceeding, as most people know, is not like the closing of a pleading cycle in a judicial proceeding. That is, a lot of information comes in after the reply comments, and we could contemplate that. I mean, I think either approach sounds like it could be more productive, at least for the input from this group, than trying to stick to those deadlines with some of the factors that everyone has noted.
Thank you. Gene, do you have a comment or reflection?
I always agree with Tom. Since at one point I used to work very closely with him. Tom's correct, and I think as we discussed as an aside that the commission would be happy to entertain working with the committee with respect to that deliverable date.
Okay. Dick Murgon.
Again, after consultation from Tempo's legal counsel, we would agree with Mrs. Group. And part of the thought also it being is to be able to absorb maybe some of those initial comments in the filings and to be able to react to that, so we would have that as a basis of information, I think would bring a higher value to the input we have as a group.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments? So Chief Reyes and I will circle back with Gene and the staff subsequent to this meeting to figure out procedurally what we need to do. And we'll talk over lunch, see if there's any action needs to be taken by us today before we wrap up. Further question or comment before we move into the committee, one of the afternoon agenda items, before we move into that section and push it forward in the agenda. Chief Reyes.
Thank you, sir. All right, as has been mentioned, and I appreciate some of you that have already stepped forward and told us of the time constraint and other commitments for later this afternoon. So I think it is good, and it is also important for us to move into the subcommittees, because I think at the end of the day, that's what everybody around the table is looking to see, where they're going to land, and let's start rolling up our sleeves. So as we sat with the staff from the commission and we started trying to delve out this massive project and massive undertaking, and we felt this thing could only have been accepted and taken on if we tried to break it into pieces. And so one of the things that we thought about was the four, well, initially it wasn't even four, just the major thrust moving forward. How do we dissect this and break it into manageable projects? And so we came up with four subcommittees that we feel are important and that will help us undertake this work on. So the first working group and the subcommittee that's been identified is just a broad one titled Interoperability. That is going to be the first working group in the subcommittee of this committee. The second one would be applications and user requirements. And I'll come back around. I'm giving you the names of the subcommittees first, and then I'll circle back around and give you the chairs and the co-chairs, just so that we can get the subcommittees listed first. So the second subcommittee would be titled Applications and User Requirements. The third working group that we identified had a very critical piece at the table is security and authentication. So that is subcommittee number 3, security and authentication. And then the final component of this effort is network evolution. That is the fourth subcommittee that we've identified. So let me circle back around and identify the chair and the co-chairs of each of the working groups, and then that way we could start talking about some of the work to be done. So for the interoperability working group, the chair that we selected was Ms. Jackie Miller, who is currently the Chief Technology Officer with the New Mexico Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Assisting her with this interoperability working group is Doug Aiken, who's joining us here today, and Mr. Ajit Kadui with Nokia Simmons. The second working group, applications and user requirements, we've identified Mr. Bill Schreier, the Chief Technology Officer for the City of Seattle, who's here present with us today, and helping him with this very important task is Mark Hill with the Gila River Indian community. Working on working group number 3, we selected and identified Dr. Dennis Martinez, who's here to my right as the chair representing Harris, and helping him with security and authentication goals and tasks is going to be Stacy Black with AT&T, and also Dr. Kenneth Zunick with the Illinois Institute of Technology. Those two will serve as the vice chairs of the Security and Authentication Subcommittee. And then finally, for Network Evolution, we selected Dr. Ken Butka from Alcatel-Lucent to chair and lead that effort, and helping him in that initiative is Paul Steinberg with Motorola as the vice chair. And as has been stated, we'll talk about the committee members. We're going to do that after lunch? Yes. Yeah, we'll do that after lunch.
Thank you. Did each of you receive the electronic document that had the split out of the committees? No. Okay. So we'll make sure that we give that to you today and then make that available to you in electronic form. Before we break for lunch, let me tell you what, and this you'll receive after lunch as well, what the short-term questions are for the committees. So maybe what would help, I don't know if I threw this in here. I did not. Okay. So let me tell you what the short-term questions are. Working Group 1, interoperability. The short-term question is, what rules or policies must be implemented to ensure that public safety broadband networks are interoperable with other public safety networks, both narrowband networks, broadband networks, etc.? And the long-term question is, what are the best practices that should be established to enable interoperability? Working Group 2, applications and user requirements. The first question is, in order to ensure that public safety broadband network is interoperable on a nationwide basis, what user applications should each network be required to support? The long-term question is there an approach to ensure that over time the regulations governing the public safety broadband network stay current to meet user requirements? Working Group 3. First question is, in order to ensure that the public safety broadband network is interoperable on a nationwide basis, what security and authentication features should each network be required to implement? And the long-term question is, what best practices can be adopted to ensure increased security on the public safety broadband network? Lastly, network evolution. First question, how to establish network requirements that will ensure evolution. And the deliverable is each working group will present recommendations to be voted on by this full committee. And we talked about the May delivery dates. We will have this document as well as the committee allocation for you when we return from lunch. Any questions before we break from lunch? Yes, please, Harlan.
I respect the gentleman that asked that we be sensitive to time frames, but let me suggest something. There are many people around this table that came here at great expense to their own personal, wallet. And most of us don't work for corporations that have an expense account. If you're going to have face-to-face meetings, you need to have an all-day meeting where when we come in here, we spend our money wisely. To have a 3 or 4 hour meeting and people leaving before even that is over is really a waste of a lot of our time. So I have to be really frank about it.
Thank you for your subtlety, Harlan. Yeah. Yeah, I understand, Harlan. Thank you for your comment. Any other questions or comments?
This is Robert Nelson. Can you hear me? Hello?
Doug? Okay. Do we have someone on the conference bridge with a question?
Yes.
Go ahead, caller.
Robert Nelson. I was asking if those documents that you're going to hand out at lunch, if you could email them out to us. That way we have them in front of us too, through the email system. You have our email addresses there.
Yeah, we certainly will. We'll push those out today to the full FACA list.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Further questions or comments? Is someone from staff prepared to give us ideas on where is a good place to go to lunch in the area?
Not a lot of options.
So we have the courtyard.
It's on premises.
Okay.
As well as a pot belly up toward the Mandarin, around the building.
All right.
And of course, the Mandarin.
All right, so we are going to have to most likely re-enter security, correct? Yeah, so we most likely have to re-enter security. If that's the case, let's just plan on being back here at 1 p.m. and thank you for this morning. Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, thank you for returning this afternoon. There should be 2 documents that may interest you in front of your seating position. First is an overview of the working groups. That's this document. You have 1 document? Okay, so then let me walk you through it given that document. You have this document. The A means that you would be in the Applications and User Group Committee. The E means Network Evolution Committee. The I is the Interoperability Group, and the S is the Security and Authentication. So take a look there and remember that if you have huge energy on where you're assigned and desire to be in a different spot, make sure to catch me hopefully before we leave today. So that we can make some shuffles. So with that, questions or comments before we get started? Bill, do you have something?
Yes, so could we add a group?
I don't know. What are you thinking?
Governance and architecture. And when I say architecture, I mean things like what happens at a local jurisdiction, at a city, county, region, or state, as opposed to what sort of thing components of a network are nationwide.
Gene? He's here?
You might solicit from the group if they think that's a good idea or not.
I think that's an excellent idea. The biggest problem, I moved from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area to the Atlanta area, and the difference between the governance in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg UASI for interoperability and the Atlanta area UASI is tremendous. Atlanta's dysfunctional. from a North Fulton perspective, there is no say whatsoever in that system, whereas in Charlotte, every player that uses the system has a say in the governance. It's just the way it's structured. And there should be some guidelines in regards to how that's set up, particularly when federal dollars are putting this thing forward.
So that was governance and architecture. All right, thank you for your comment, sir. Further comments on that while we wait for Gene to pop back in and find out if there's any prohibitions against creating a fifth committee. Yes, sir. Oh, go ahead, Jennifer. So the question is, are we allowed to create a fifth working group? Yes.
It could be a long-term issue as opposed to a shorter-term May 11th issue.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Stacy?
Yeah, so that may lead to my question, which is, can members serve on more than one working group?
I don't know of any prohibition against that. Jennifer, is there?
Gene, Gene, can members serve on more than one working group?
So let's assume you can unless we hear otherwise. So let's start here. If you have a desire to serve on more than one committee, get that information to me. And if Gene finds out we can't do that, then I'll know who to reach out to. Yeah.
The limitation is on the size of the working group. As Paul discussed, the purpose of this FACA is transparency, and the working group's product can't be perceived as the working group's product is simply rubber stamped by the committee. By the same token, the size of the working group can't be such that it essentially is more than the majority of the committee.
So if the working group constitutes more than a majority of the board, then it's a de facto board, and then we become our own FACA. Okay, get that. Dr. Martinez, do you have a question?
That was actually the same question as Stacey.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir?
An observation, there don't appear to be any technology company representatives on the Interoperability Committee. And there's obviously a lot of technical issues there. The public safety community is great at defining requirements, but then the technologists need to advise on the solutions.
And who do you believe would be best suited for that? What? Well,
I would volunteer, for one.
All right.
Another observation would be the Evolution Committee really doesn't have a lot to do, because we're focused on Release 8 of the 3GPP standards now, and going on to future releases, there'll be a number of features, only a subset of which are relevant to public safety. So I think evolution really needs to be decided in the future on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, actually. I think that's one that doesn't have a short-term horizon. Mm-hmm. That's one that we can actually push out without an aggressive timeline. So, and I did note your desire to move to the Interoperable Committee.
Okay.
Yes, Andy.
I've got a evolution committee. I think may be important and may have a near-term task, because as I see it, since I'm on that committee, one of the things that needs to happen is to map the future releases of LTE with the requirements of public safety, see what's there, see what's in the notice of proposed rulemaking, map the two of them together, and probably just as importantly, see what's not in the future releases that maybe should be put into future releases.
Okay. So, Andy, I want to come back to you. Okay. We're running up against a time-certain deadline for Amy. So let's move to Amy, and then let's come back and finish this discussion.
Okay.
At this time, we'll move to Amy Levine, Special Counsel of the FCC, Chairman Janikowski. Amy. It was nice of me to surprise you like that one.
No, thank
Thank you very much, and I know you have very important business underway, so I'll be brief. I just wanted to thank all of you for being here today. I know that you all have other jobs and other very important commitments, and quite a number of you traveled quite a long way to be here today. And we really appreciate your serving on the Public Safety Advisory Committee and your commitment to this process. I'd like to acknowledge Chief Jeff Johnson, who's chairing the PSAC, and also Deputy Chief Reyes, the Vice Chair, and just take this opportunity to share a few quick words. You heard from FCC Chairman Janikowski this morning that ours is a shared mission, and that really cannot be emphasized enough. This afternoon, the work of the committee truly gets underway with a discussion of the committee process and the individual working group plans. And it's the diverse expertise and varied backgrounds in public safety communications of this group that the committee will bring to bear on our shared effort. Few things are more important than ensuring that public safety has access to a nationwide, interoperable, wireless broadband network. And it's through this collaboration that we will deliver the promise of broadband technologies to our nation's first responders, so that police can talk to fire, can talk to EMTs, and everybody can be on the same page and have the same information in real time. We look forward to working with you and the success of the working groups, and we look forward to receiving the recommendations of the committee. And again, thank you so much for being here and for serving on the PSAC.
So let's come back to you, Andy. Could you restate the front part of that?
Okay.
The last part made a lot of sense to me, so.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that if you look at the fact that Release 8 is going to be the release that gets installed, all right, and you look at the requirements of public safety, it's important to map those, all right, but it's also important to take a look at Release 9, Release 10, Release 11, what the 3GPP and the other standards boards have already included in them that may be of value to public safety, and I think just as importantly to find out what's not there that public safety may want to try to figure out how to get in there or to do something else about.
Would that happen, in your view, in the Network Evolution Committee?
Yes.
Okay. And is there a time, is there anything in that would make that have to happen in the next 2 months?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, when I go through the next, the NPRM, all right, there are things in that document that need to be commented on based on the evolution and the standards as they're developing.
Okay. And are you on that committee?
Yes.
Andy? All right. So, so this afternoon, we are going, when we wrap up the regular meeting, staff has set up meeting rooms so that those of you that would like to meet with your committee chairs, you can take this opportunity to be productive there. So that would be a great opportunity to take that up with the chair and drive down, Andy, to a timeline that you think is helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. We'd be responsive to that.
Jeff, can we get a check on the phone bridge, make sure we're on?
Thank you. Do we have our phone bridge online?
You do.
Okay, very good. Did you receive electronically the documents that we're talking about?
I did anyway. Microphone.
Excellent, thank you. We have a question down here, Dick.
Well, I just wanted to comment on Joe's recommendation to talk about governance. My concern would be that ERIC was created to provide advice to the FCC on regulatory matters that impact interoperability. That governance is actually, in my belief, is outside of the scope of the FCC. So I don't see where it actually brings value to the FCC or something that they can act on. And I would see that as scope creep for this group. And I think we've got more than enough to do without getting into things that they don't have any authority over.
Thank you, Dick. Further questions or comments?
I have a question on the applications working group.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
If one of the objectives of the requirements is to support, the full suite of applications you can have on broadband, including video, I think part of what we need to lay down is some requirements and guidelines for the applications so that they're properly behaved, particularly video, in terms of bandwidth consumed, that kind of thing, codecs used, that all of those things that go into making it efficient, does that properly belong in the applications working group, or is that more a function of interoperability or somewhere else?
Good question. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Yes, go ahead,
I
sir.
think a fundamental issue highlighted by this discussion and the questions is that we're thinking about this without having a clear definition of the scope of each of the working groups. Because Andy's raised some very valid points about features that public safety might require that'll be in future standards, but equally those could be addressed in the applications group defining those requirements, like push-to-talk voice, for example. So we'd be very careful that we don't end up with a lack of clear definitions and working groups overlapping.
It's an excellent comment. I wonder if the most logical output from today, and I'm respectful that the FCC is trying very carefully not to be prescriptive in what they ask us to do, but rather to create the challenges for us and allow us to solve that, and in many cases define that scope ourselves. Because the last thing I think they want to do, it made it clear to us, the last thing they want to do is to hand us the solutions. I think they want our meaningful input. So I'm wondering if the approach to that, sir, isn't that we ask the committees first to draft a scope and essentially a work plan, and then as you submit that, we'll compare it to make sure there isn't any overlap.
That would make sense, yeah.
So let's make that an expectation of our committee chairs, that your first output should be essentially a work plan and scope. You submit that to Eddie and I, and we'll make sure when working with the staff that there doesn't have overlap. If there is, we'll circle back with you. Excellent comment. Further questions or comments before we move on? Yes, Brian.
One of the things that actually Harlan mentioned earlier was the notion of the deadlines paralleling the requirements of the comment and reply comment period. One of the things that may be helpful to this group is the opportunity to then take a look at the comments that are filed and put aside a moment the debate on whether or not we ask for an extension of the comments, as Tom suggested. But I think that whatever the comments are that are filed in this proceeding, it would be helpful if this group had an opportunity to review those comments and then also to provide any type of gap analysis or assessment of where those comments are deficient in certain areas where additional work may be needed. And so I think in order to try to accommodate both the information coming in on whatever that time schedule is and the work of this group, I do think there is the value of the collective minds around this table to do that type of an analysis. And it would also, I think, help complete the full record before the Commission.
So is that something that would take place, Brian, at the committee level? And we would just need staff to supply the scope of those comments to the committee?
But yeah, I mean, first off, we should all get electronic copies of the comments that are filed so that we'll have that in our own record. And you can read whatever you wish to read, but each of the committees should probably focus on those comments addressing the issues that the committees have in their purview, to the point of Mr. Quayle here with respect to the scope and defining the scope of these committees. So I just think it's an important way to ensure that what's submitted in the record isn't ignored, and more importantly, what is in the record may not cover everything, and the expertise around this table may identify additional things that need to be addressed.
Makes sense. Thank you for your comment. Further questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Brian's comment raises an important point. Putting together a review of the comments and the reply comments is an extremely time-intensive and labor-intensive process. The suggestion that, you know, we'll all sit down and read all of the comments filed is probably not real life. I don't know what the solution is, but if there's a way that we, through our combined resources or the FCC's resources, could
commission maybe a third-party entity to put together a summary of comments and reply comments, that would probably be of value to all of us in pursuing the work of this group.
Okay, we'll follow up on that, whether a synopsis is available or if one could be obtained through one way or another.
I think both of these submit that the comments ought to be broken out in the same vein as the working groups, right? That way, those comments that are only pertain to certain working groups, and that particular working group can focus on those comments and not have to read the entire record.
Yep. Thank you. Yes, Brian.
Certainly.
Focusing on those particular comments that your group, your committee would be interested in. And most likely for the industry sector around the table, your law firms will probably provide you a very nice summary of the proceeding. And for those in the public safety side who also have law firms here in Washington, they will probably also provide a summary. So I think summaries will probably be pretty easy to obtain, but oftentimes summaries will just be a guide, in essence, to where you really need to look at the filing to get a full flavor of what the commenter is providing.
Further questions or comments? Charles, you haven't said a darn thing today. You're starting to make me worried. You all right? Okay. Okay, well, I think we covered this morning a discussion and overview of the PSAC individual work plans. I think you now should have this document. And this is the document that describes the short-term, the long-term questions. You have free rein as you charter your committee to define that wider or narrower if you think it's appropriate, and then we'll just make sure it fits. If it's okay with the FCC staff, I'll probably shoot you a chartering document that I use in all my projects. It's pretty helpful in terms of walking through the process. I'll get that out to the chairs this week. And I think you'll start your first meeting today, and the chair will drive that until you have a result. Now, I think there are a number of things I don't know today. I don't know what the process is by which we get our deadlines extended. I have made note of it, and we'll follow up with the staff subsequent to this meeting. I understand we desire that, and we'll pursue that. And then as it relates to the fifth group relating to architecture and governance, I'll also pick that up. We'll deal with that at a subsequent meeting since that isn't as time sensitive. And Dick, I'll vet with Eddie and the staff. We'll vet whether the governance issue is distracting or productive, in scope or out of scope, and then we'll bring that back at the next meeting.
Well, but I think Dick's comment was more, is it within our scope?
Yeah.
Yeah, since we're providing regulatory advice for regulatory body in the FCC.
Yeah, I captured that. Thank you, Dick. Okay, so anything further as it relates to the individual committees, your work plans? You know, when we adjourn today that you're going to be assigned a room. You can go there and start to form, storm, and norm, and begin to formulate that charter document scoping your work. All right. So unless I'm missing something on the agenda, Jennifer Manor, go ahead, Doug.
Well, we'll break out to these rooms. I heard earlier that we have to have detailed minutes of all of our activities. So I would assume that one of the first things we're going to have to do is decide who's going to take those minutes. And I take it that that's a function of the members of the committee.
Gene?
The working groups meet informally.
Okay.
It's only this group.
Okay, thank you.
No one from the FCC will be in the room with you. So therefore, you won't be on the next party concerns to the extent that you can talk to self-discharge.
Thank you for the clarification.
So, and because that is not an activity of directly of this functioning and assembled committee, we will actually direct you to your working groups after we adjourn this regular meeting. And those working groups, as he said, do not need the same level of minutes that we do. sure.
That's good.
It is helpful, isn't it? So with that, Jennifer Manner, if you would like to make your closing comments.
Thank you so much, and I want to express my sincere gratitude to everyone on the committee and to, of course, the committee chair and vice chair. This isn't an easy process. I have the opportunity and the honor to work on interoperability close to 24 hours a day. So I know how difficult an issue it is, but I also recognize how important it is, as does the commission and the staff. I think you've heard earlier today from Pat and Behzad and Brian Hurley, who are three of the lead folks who spend a substantial amount of the time on interoperability. But I think with the rulemaking open, with the input of this committee and the experts around this committee, I think that we have an opportunity collectively to really make a tremendous difference for public safety communications for this country. So what I wanted to do was express my sincere thanks and gratitude. I know Jamie couldn't be here today as much as he wanted to be here today, and I'd like to express on behalf of him his thanks as well. What I want to say is that our door is always open. I'm not sure if Jeff and Eddie had said this, but we're going to be very sensitive to folks' times and the amount of time this committee takes, and we very much are appreciative, and we're looking for times to schedule around your schedules where there might be conferences in DC or folks are in town for other reasons to try and avoid excess costs. We know this is a time and money issue for all of you, but we do think it's a very, very important issue, and we very much appreciate it. So with that, Jean, Brian, and my door and the Admiral's doors are always open for you, and we look forward to conversations within the formal group as well as on a regular basis, as we already do communicate. So thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Jennifer. So before we adjourn the meeting and move to our committee work, let's make the note that once we convene, Roger Quayle will move to the Interoperability group, and Chuck Dowd will move to the Application and User Requirements group. And we will make those, we will note those changes. For those of you that have not had an opportunity to contact me, if you are passionate about working somewhere else, please see me after we tap the gavel, and we'll go from there. Who are our committee chairs? Will you please raise your hand? So what committee are you with?
I'm Ken Budka, Network Evolution.
Okay. Next one, Bill? Okay. And we have one here.
Security and authentication.
Okay, security and authentication. And Doug Aiken is the acting chair today for interoperability, right? Okay. So, Gene, yes.
Soon after Paula from the General Counsel's office went upstairs, she sent me an email and said, please remind everybody about the ex parte rules. As many of you know, if there's an open proceeding and you come to talk to the commission staff about an issue in that proceeding, an open issue, you're subject to the ex parte rules, and that conversation needs to be memorialized and entered into the record. So please, if you're here and you're talking about something in one of the open dockets, and I would assume it's going to be the interoperability docket, the ex parte rules do apply. Okay?
Well, be more specific. I mean, any of these meetings or this?
These meetings, I shouldn't say the term automatically, but we keep a record of these meetings because they're public, and that record is made public. Okay? The other thing, this is a point that's come to our attention earlier on. Some of you may have heard us say this. ERIC, the Emergency Response Interoperability Center, is a division within the Public Safety, Homeland and Security Bureau, just like the Policy Division. I know there was some confusion early on about that, but I just wanted to remind folks that it's a division within the Commission that works in promulgating rules, that makes recommendations to the Commission. With respect to room numbers, let me see if I can keep this straight. Evolution can remain here in this room. The working group handling applications and user requirements can go to room 488. Security and encryption 468. And what's left? Interoperability, 438. Straight down the hall, up the stairs, make a right, and those rooms are right there. And we'll actually guide you over. With that, thank you for everything. Thank you for your patience. I apologize for not choreographing this a little tighter. We thought it was important, obviously, and it is important to get everybody in a room together and to take advantage of the time and have the working group chairs talk also. If there's anything, please feel free to contact me. Please also copy Jeff and Eddie so we keep them in the loop. Also Brian, in case for some reason I'm not here or I'm unable to get back to someone as quickly, we try to respond as quickly as possible. Please include Brian on those emails also. With that, thank you so much, and I'll leave it to the chair to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please. Stacy.
I have another question. What is going to be the process for some of the working groups to sort of share notes and compare notes? Because a lot of the things that we'll be doing in our working group, I think, has implications on some of the other working groups and vice versa. So, and I'm just sort of throwing it out there. Will there be a way for us to sort of matrix sort of what we're doing so that we can, this all comes together with sort of as a collective plan as opposed to 4 individual plans that might have conflict or something like that?
So Gene, that raises an excellent question. Does the FCC have a electronic sharing platform?
I can look into that. I don't believe we do. What typically is done is the committee comes up with internal processes of its own so that the working groups can share amongst themselves and then with the full committee.
So unless he discovers they have one, it sounds like the... Go ahead.
And the more I think about it, the more I don't think it would be something we would want to do because of the concerns that you're dealing with substantive matters, open in a proceeding, and I don't think you would want us to have access to those things.
So ideally, we would have, at the committee level, you would establish some web-based sharing approach. Yeah, exactly. Yes, sir.
A project called First Responder Communities of Practice that requires invitation to be allowed in, and then a community could be set up that could be this group with a host for that committee that also has to authorize the person in, and within it you have a wiki, a documents folder that can accommodate up to 25 megabyte files, a blog, plus email notification of any changes. So if it were the mood of the committee and the FCC feels this would be an appropriate way to proceed, we might set up a community just for this body, and then within that community there could be the sharing mechanism set forth, and that could be done within a day. Somebody give me the list, we could set it up.
Thank you very much. So I made a note of it. If after the committee chairs meet, if you feel like you need to share, then you ping me and I'll connect with you, ask you to set up communities, and away we go. Further questions or comments? Yes, sir.
From the bridge. I've just found in many proceedings before that the subcommittee chairs having a periodic conference call helps to remove duplication of effort and things like that. So to me, I think that's something you ought to build into your process so that we can make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes.
Okay, I agree with you. We will set that up. Chief Reyes, final comments before we tap the gavel?
No, I mean, I think we've got our marching orders in front of us. I'm pretty happy with all the committee chairs that are here present, Doug for stepping up, for Jackie, and I think we're going to break out, start breaking some ice, and hopefully start generating some good summaries and start working on this process.
For those folks that are on the bridge, if you will send us your contact information, then what else did you need, Gene? You needed...
Just the phone number. Reach out to them.
Okay. So if you send us your contact information, then the staff here can reach out to you subsequent to tapping the gavel here.
Okay, send it to Brian?
Yep. Go ahead, caller.
Send the information to Brian?
Yeah, Brian would work. Eddie, anything else? Okay, so one more time, interoperability 438, applications 488, security and authentication 468, network evolution right here in this room. When the committee chairs wrap up your work, no need to come back here. You're free to go, and we will get back to you as soon as we can possibly identify the next meeting date, and I'll get back to you on all the items that we talked about. So, thank you for coming.